Amelie, a 2001 romantic comedy made by director Jean-Pierre Jeunet, follows the story of the main character Amelie, who has a mischievous personality and a highly active imagination. Throughout the film, Amelie secretly involves herself in many complex schemes which interfere with other people's lives and eventually leads to her finding a love of her own. Today, we are going to dive into what makes Amelie a visual masterpiece, while starting off with colour. The colour scheme is a staple of Amelie, with a major focus on the green hues contrasting against the striking pops of red. Although the complementary colours green and red are the most visually captivating to the eye when watching Amelie, the film still follows the three-colour rule, with green as the primary colour, yellow as a secondary colour, and red as the accent colour. Here are some visual representations of how these three colours are dispersed across each frame. This displays that the green tends to be created by the colour grading of the film, which can be seen mainly on the walls and the floor. The tones of the secondary colour yellow can be seen in the actor's skin along with the wall. Finally, the accent colour of red tends to be seen in clothing and props along with Amelie's lipstick. The carefully chosen colours all create and give meaning to the film, with green connoting feelings of envy, jealousy, luck, nature and health. Yellow connoting feelings of happiness, positivity, spontaneity, hope and joy. And red connoting feelings of energy, passion, danger, anger and love. However, there is one colour that occasionally gets added to the colour palette in Amelie, and that colour is blue. And in this scene in particular, there are only the primary colours red, yellow and blue. The colour blue is sparsely used, but when it is, it tends to be either a dramatic moment or a key moment in the film. For example, a car accident, or when Amelie was falling in love with Nino by the photo booth. The blue props are very subtle but can be seen in the plastic bag Nino is holding, or the bottles behind Amelie, or the photo booth where Amelie first sees Nino in the film. Another key blue item is Nino's photo album that Amelie goes through after he drops it. I mean, not even the sky in Amelie is blue, so there has to be some importance or significance in the use of blue for these items. The production designer for Amelie was Alain Beneteau, who is an award-winning French production designer. For Amelie, she won the BAFTA Award for Best Production Designer and the ADG Excellence in Production Design Award. Some other notable films that Alain Beneteau was the production designer for are Pan, Lost in Transit, and are most notably recognised by a wide mainstream audience, Wonder Woman. In comparison to Amelie, these films have more elements of the fantasy genre, with Wonder Woman having a blue and grey tone colour scheme, and Pan being more brown and orange toned. In terms of colour schemes and colour grading, Amelie is often compared to The Double Life of Veronique, which is another French film made 10 years before Amelie in 1991. These films are often compared since they share a very similar colour scheme of red and green complementary colours. Overall, these colours help to outline the central themes of isolation and love in Amelie. The lack of cool tones apart from key blue items gives an element of warmth to the film, which is what the production designer Alain Beneteau had in mind since the beginning. Props are a key element of Amelie that help to move the story forward. Each prop is carefully placed with a purpose to drive the story, whether it is the talking photos or Amelie's father's gnome. To fit in with the colour scheme of Amelie, the main props tend to be red, as this makes them stand out against the green and yellow colours in the frame. The majority of the props in Amelie also have a retro element, especially with the vinyl player, for example. This helps with the world building of Amelie. It is clear that Alain Beneteau paid very close attention to details when it came to the props in Amelie, as they are almost a character extension of Amelie herself. For example, the props help to display the small pleasures in Amelie's life, that fill the void of emptiness and loneliness that she feels. Another noticeable use of props in Amelie is the tidiness and order of them in each frame. The carefully curated world makes no room for mismatched props. The detail of each individual prop in Amelie does not go unnoticed. For example, the mini toys in the mystery box she finds. These little details, including the blue phones and blue arrows when Amelie brings back Nino's photo book, help to bring symbolism to the film. For the costume and clothing in Amelie, there is a clear divide between what Amelie wears compared to everyone else. Amelie is typically seen in red throughout most of the film, unlike the other characters who are seen in more neutral tones, for example, black, brown, or white. This contrast makes Amelie stand out drastically compared to everyone else. One of the only other times another character is wearing red are these red Converses. The styles of clothing Amelie wears are simple, with either one colour or polka dots on the clothing. An item of clothing that Amelie can be seen wearing a lot throughout the film is a cardigan in either the colour red or green. The green cardigan that Amelie wears towards the end of the film, when she is upset and stuck in her imagination, is very similar to the green cardigan she wore as a child. This could signify that she feels isolated and alone, just like she did when she was younger. At some points you can see Georgette wearing a green cardigan as well. So perhaps the symbolism of the green cardigan on Amelie conveys her finally connecting with the world surrounding her and how far she has come. For Amelie, her hairstyle and colour make a statement throughout the film. Amelie's pale complexion contrasts harshly against her dark black hair. The signature look and style of Amelie's choppy short hair with a high fringe develops into a new hairstyle slowly throughout the film. Amelie's hair progressively looks less short-cut and studious by the end of the film, as her hair gets longer and she ties it up more often with pins. By the end of the film, this leaves Amelie with natural, lightly curled inwards hair compared to the beginning, giving Amelie a staple French hairstyle. This progress in hairstyle means that Amelie is not covering her face as much, which could connote that she is getting less shy throughout the film. The locations in Amelie make the film a depiction of contemporary Parisian culture. Symmetry is a key component in many of the locations featured in Amelie, leaving the lines of buildings continuously leading the eye to Amelie in the frame. All the locations are typically very noticeably French, making Amelie stand out in the romantic comedy genre against the American style of rom-coms. Most of the locations shown in Amelie are naturally busy places in France, yet in Amelie it feels like a small town with not that many people. This depicts how the film differs from reality, creating a world of its own. Generally, the locations in Amelie are heavily colour graded green, with already natural tones of yellow to create warmth in the film. Amelie is a character that prefers to observe rather than speak. This theme carries on to Amelie's apartment, as we can tell what Amelie's personality is like through her apartment. The quirky animal paintings on the wall in her bedroom and the pig light tell us that Amelie's world is unusual compared to the other characters. It is evident that Amelie's apartment is closed off from the rest of the world, through the set walls being the only red in a room that isn't a prop or clothing in the whole of Amelie. This closed off feel emphasises how Amelie is out of touch with reality, which is also displayed through her daydreaming. It is fitting that the colours surrounding Amelie in her apartment are red, green and yellow, since the meaning of these colours reflects Amelie's personality. According to Aline Benator, all of the sets for Amelie were built in Germany, and Aline stated that she wanted Amelie's apartment to be warm through the colour red, to show that although Amelie is a lonely girl, she still has a lot of warmth. Consequently, the happiness versus misery and fantasy against reality are constant struggles throughout Amelie, and like the best production designers, Aline Benator made use of the colours to elevate the story, to make the film reflect these struggles along with Amelie's personality. Thank you for watching my analysis of the production design in Amelie.